Lesson 2.4, the percent equation. You've used the percent proportion to find the missing part P, percent N, or whole W. You can also use the percent equation. The percent equation is part equals percent times whole. So we're going to label the diagram that shows the relation between the percent proportion and the percent equation with the terms part, whole, and percent. And we're going to use each term once. So if we start, we had part over whole equaled what? Well, that equaled our percent over 100. So we'd say part over whole equals our percent. And then I want to get the part by itself. So to get the part by itself, since I'm dividing by the whole, I'm going to multiply both sides by the whole. And then the wholes would cancel. So then we'd have part equals percent times whole. So this just shows how we start from the percent proportion and we get to the percent equation. Okay? So, again, use the percent equation. You can use the percent equation to solve problems that involve percents. Okay? Note that the percent is written as a decimal. So that's the one big change here. When we have our percent, we now have to change that to a decimal in order to use it in our equation. Okay? So let's try a few examples. If we go down to the bottom, it says write an equation for each problem, then solve. So example A, what is 6% of 200? So again, when I go to solve these, I'm going to start with my blank equation. So part equals percent times whole. And remember, the term that comes by is the part and by of is the whole, and then our percent is our percent. So when I read this, I'm going to fill in the places I know. What is, so again, what is, I don't know the part here. That equals the percent, and we have is 6%. So again, we got to change 6% to a decimal. Change 6% to a decimal, we move our decimal point back twice. So we have 6/100. And then of 200. So again, by of is the whole. So we take it times 200. So I have the part equals 6/100 times 200. Again, I want to get my variable by itself. Well, the variable is by itself. So we can just go ahead and multiply. 6/100 times 200 equals 12. Then again, we have to ask ourselves, what did the variable represent? The variable represented the part here, and we have no label on our whole, so we would just say P equals 12. Our part equals 12. Okay? Example B, it says find 72% of 50. So when we want to find 72% of 50, the find is the same thing as the what is, our part. So again, I start with part equals percent times whole, and I fill in the pieces I know. So my part, that's the find, that's what I'm trying to figure out. I have 72%. Again, I got to change my percents to decimals. So I take my decimal point, move it 2 times to the left. So that's 72/100. Then times of 50, and again, by of is the whole. So now I have my part equals 72/100 times 50. Again, I want to figure out what does my variable represent, or I want to get my variable by itself. Since P is already by itself, I can go ahead and multiply. So P equals 36. And again, I ask myself, what did that P represent? Well, P represented the part, and we have no label on our whole, so we have no label here. So we'd say our part is 36. Okay, if we turn over to the next page. Our directions say, write an equation for each problem, then solve, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So example E, what percent of 40 is 9? So again, I always start with my blank equation. Part equals percent times whole, and then I'm just going to start filling it in with the pieces they give me. So what percent, so I don't know my percent this time, of 40, again, of is the whole, so I'm going to fill that in for the whole, is 9, and by is the part. So 9 equals P times 40. Again, I want to get that variable by itself. So since I'm taking P times 40, I'm going to do the opposite of multiplying, which is dividing. So I divide both sides by 40. 9 divided by 40, 225 thousandths. That equals RP. Again, I had to ask myself, what did that variable represent? Well, that represented the percent. So now I have to change this decimal back into a percent. So to get it to a percent, I'm going to move my decimal point 2 spots to the right. So we would say P is 22.5%. So this means 9 is 22.5% of 40. Okay, example F. 27 is what percent of 150? So again, I'm going to start with my blank equation. Part equals percent times whole. And then I fill in what I know. 27 is, so again, by is the part. So 27 equals what percent, so I don't know what my percent is, times, and then of 150. Of, again, is the whole, so we'd have times 150. Again, I want my variable by itself, so since I'm taking P times 150, I'm going to divide both sides by 150 to get that variable by itself. That simplifies. So 27 divided by 150 is 1800ths. So then again, I ask myself, what did that variable represent? That variable represented the percent, so I have to change this decimal back into a percent. So I move it 2 spots to the right, or I take it times 100. So we would say the percent equals 18%. So again, this means 27 is 18% of 150. Okay? Again, write an equation for each problem, then solve, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So G says 39 is 84% of what number? So again, I start with my blank equation. Parts equals percent times whole. And I fill in the pieces I know. 39 is, so 39 is my part. 84%, and now I know my percent. I got to change it to a decimal. 84 hundredths times what number? The whole. I don't know what that is. So again, I want to get that whole by itself, that variable by itself. So since I'm taking it times 84 hundredths, I'm going to divide by 84 hundredths so they simplify down. So 39 divided by 84 hundredths is 46 and 4/10. And again, I ask myself, what did that variable represent? That variable represented my whole. Since I don't have a label on the part, I don't need a label on the whole. So we would say 39 is 84% of 46 and 4/10. Example H, 26% of what number is 45? So again, I start with my equation. Parts equals percent times whole. Then I fill in the pieces I know. So 26%. So again, I got to change my percent to a decimal. So 26 hundredths. Of what number? Again, of is the whole. I don't know what that is 45, and is the part. So again, I want to solve for W for my whole here. So since I'm taking 26 hundredths times W, I'm going to divide by 26 hundredths to simplify. And what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So those simplify down. So 45 divided by 26 hundredths, it's 173 and 1/10. And then I'm going to ask myself, what did that W represent? That variable, that W represented our whole. Since there's no label on the part, we have no label on the whole. So we would say 45 is 26% of 173 and 1/10. Okay, so again, we always start with our equation, part equals percent times whole, and then fill in the pieces we know and solve for the unknown. Okay, number 4. A local bakery sold 60 loaves of bread in one day. If 65% of these were sold in the afternoon, how many loaves were sold in the afternoon? Okay, so again, I'm going to start with my equation. Part equals percent times whole. And then I'm going to fill in the pieces that I know. So I know the bakery sold 60 loaves of bread in one day. That's 65% sold in the afternoon. And I want to know how many are sold in the afternoon. So now I've picked out the pieces that are important to me. I have to fill them in with my variables. So we sold 60 loaves in one day. So one day would be our whole here because it's the whole entire day. So I can substitute 60 in for W. And then that's 65% of those were sold in the afternoon. So 65 is my percent. Again, I change my percent to a decimal. And then I want to know how many were sold in the afternoon. So that's my part. So the afternoon is part of your whole day. So we're figuring out the part. So again, I want to get my variable by itself. Well, P is already by itself. So I can go ahead and multiply 65 hundredths times 60. And when I do that, I get 39. And again, we're talking about loaves of bread, so we would say we sold 39 loaves during the afternoon.